Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into student motivation today. How to get those brains firing on all cylinders.
Always a hot topic.
Yeah, for sure. And lucky for us, we've got this awesome article, 5 Keys to Motivating Students.
Oh, yeah, I've heard good things about that one.
It's based on Paul Pintrich's research, but Maryellen Weimer, she's got a PhD, really made it easy to digest.
I like it when they do that. Makes it much easier to apply in the classroom.
Absolutely. Before we get into the good stuff, though, if you're enjoying these deep dives, do us a favor and hit that like button.
Yeah, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
Or leave a comment. We love hearing from you. All right, so let's jump into those 5 keys. The first one's called adaptive self-efficacy.
Adaptive self-efficacy.
Sounds kind of jargony, right? But it basically means if students think they can succeed, they're more likely to actually try.
It's that I can do this attitude.
Exactly. And it all starts with the feedback we give.
Oh, for sure. Feedback's huge.
Not just pointing out mistakes, but really highlighting their progress. Even the small wins.
It's about showing them they're capable.
Like when you level up in a video game,
Yeah.
you see that progress bar move, and you're like, yes, I'm getting there.
Love that analogy. And it's not just about feedback. It's also about the tasks we give them.
Right. Got to make sure they're challenged.
Got to find that sweet spot. Challenging, but achievable.
Not too easy, not too hard.
Yeah, like Goldilocks.
Goldilocks, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so belief in their abilities, the right level of challenge. Where does the adaptive part come in?
That's where the second key comes in, adaptive attributions and control beliefs.
Adaptive attributions and control beliefs.
It's all about how students perceive the context of their learning. Do they think their effort actually makes a difference?
So if they think you're going to fail no matter what, why bother studying, right?
Yeah, if they don't see the connection between their effort and the outcome.
They need to understand that they have control over their learning. It reminds me of this one student I had, convinced they were just bad at math. Turns out they just had this fixed mindset.
Oh, yeah, the fixed mindset versus growth mindset thing.
But once we started talking about the brain being like a muscle, it can get stronger with practice, they started to see they could actually improve.
So powerful, that shift in mindset.
It really is. Okay, so feedback, challenging tasks, and understanding the link between effort and outcomes.
All crucial for building that self-efficacy.
Now, what about interest? Not every subject's going to be a student's favorite.
Right, and that's where the third key comes in, interest and intrinsic motivation.
Interest and intrinsic motivation, so sparking that internal drive.
Yeah, even when it's not their favorite subject.
We know a teacher's passion can be contagious, but we can't rely on that alone.
And luckily, we don't have to. The research actually talks about 2 types of interest. Personal interest, like genuinely loving the subject, and then situational interest.
Situational interest, okay, I'm intrigued.
So that's about being engaged by specific tasks or activities.
So even if a student isn't crazy about history, a really cool activity can still get them motivated.
Totally. Think about turning a history lesson into an escape room or having them create a historical skit.
Ooh, I love that. So tapping into that novelty and variety.
Exactly. It keeps them engaged in the learning process.
Makes sense. So we've got self-efficacy, effort, and now interest. What's next?
Well, I think it's time we talked about value and relevance.
Like, why should students care about this stuff in the first place?
You got it. Sadly, a lot of students don't see the value.
And as teachers, it's so obvious to us we forget to point it out.
It really is. We assume they just get it.
Mistake.
We need to constantly show them the relevance, the usefulness.
Connect it to their lives.
Yeah, think real-world examples, case studies, even personal anecdotes.
Show them how it all fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly, because knowledge without application, it's not very motivating.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. So we've got self-belief, effort, interest, and now value.
What about goals? Where do those fit in?
Goals. That's our 5th and final key. And this is where we go beyond just grades.
Because it's not all about the A's, right?
Right. We got to think about social goals, too.
Social goals, interesting.
Research shows that peer groups and interactions can really shape motivation.
So like wanting to fit in, be accepted by their friends.
Partly, but it's also about collaboration, feeling like they're part of a team.
I see. So more group projects, peer mentoring.
Yeah. Create that sense of community, where they feel supported and encouraged.
And they're learning for each other, not just themselves.
Exactly. That sense of belonging can be so powerful.
This is all so insightful. So we've got self-efficacy, attributions, interest, value, and goals. It's like a whole new framework for understanding motivation.
And they're all interconnected, working together to create this motivational force.
So for our listeners who are ready to put this into practice, what are some key takeaways? Well, that's a great question, and that's exactly what we'll be diving into next. We'll explore some practical strategies, for bringing these 5 keys to life in your classroom.
From feedback techniques to designing those super engaging activities.
Stay tuned. It's like having all these tools, to boost motivation.
Right. And we got to pick the right one for the job. Speaking of tools, all this research on motivation, it got me thinking about analogies. They're like mental bridges, help connect new ideas to stuff students already know.
Absolutely. Like when we were talking about self-efficacy, that whole leveling up analogy makes it so much clearer.
Right. And it makes me think, how can we turn these research insights into actual strategies for the classroom? Like when we were discussing effort and control, you mentioned giving students choices. How does that actually look in practice?
Oh, there are tons of ways. Could be as simple as letting them choose project topics, research paper versus experiment. Or maybe they get a say in how they're assessed, presentations, written tests, that sort of thing.
Give them some ownership.
Exactly. When they have a voice, they're more invested.
It's like, hey, this isn't just happening to me. I'm actually part of this.
Exactly. It all ties back to those adaptive attributions, helps them see their effort really matters.
What about that value and relevance piece? It's one thing to tell students something's important, but how do we make them feel it?
Storytelling. That's where storytelling comes in. Real-world examples, case studies, even personal anecdotes, stuff that connects the material to their lives.
Because it's not just memorizing facts.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. Like if you're teaching photosynthesis in biology, don't just go through the steps.
Right, connected to something they care about.
Their food, the air they breathe, stuff like that.
Or bring in a farmer, someone who deals with this stuff every day.
Show them how it actually plays out in the real world.
Exactly. It's not just some abstract concept in a textbook.
It seems like a big part of all this is creating the right classroom culture, an environment that actually supports all these motivational principles.
Couldn't agree more. And one of the biggest things is building community. Remember we talked about those social goals. Students got to feel like they belong, like they're part of something bigger.
Right. And that sense of belonging, it can come from so many things. Group projects, peer mentoring, even just like taking the time to get to know your students.
Absolutely. A classroom where everyone feels valued, respected, where it's safe to take risks.
And make mistakes.
Mistakes are how we learn. Right.
Totally. If you're too afraid to fail, you'll never push yourself.
And that reminds me of grit, that perseverance, even when things get tough.
How do we teach that?
By modeling it ourselves, celebrating effort, not just perfection, and providing the right support. Show them setbacks are normal. It's how you respond that matters.
This is also inspiring. It's like a whole new way of thinking about motivation.
It's not about rewards and punishments. It's about creating an environment where students are curious, they put in effort, and they celebrate their growth.
But let's be real. Putting all this into practice, it can be tough.
Oh, absolutely. Teaching is no walk in the park.
What about those days when you're just trying to get them to sit down and be quiet? Forget sparking intrinsic motivation.
Right. No magic formula.
But there's something so rewarding about those moments when you do see that spark. That aha moment makes it all worth it.
Totally. It's like, yes, we figured it out.
And even those little victories, they inspire us to keep going, keep learning, keep finding new ways to motivate our students. So for our listeners who are feeling inspired but maybe a little overwhelmed, what's your advice? Where do they start?
Start small. You don't have to change everything overnight. Pick 1 or 2 of these motivation keys, the ones that really speak to you.
Right. Don't overwhelm yourself.
And then just experiment, see what works. Maybe you focus on feedback or giving more choices or connecting the content to their lives.
Find your own style.
Exactly. Be patient. It takes time. And remember, every teacher struggles with this.
You're not alone.
It's about sharing our experiences, supporting each other, and always learning new things. That's how we create those engaging, motivating classrooms for our students.
All right, so let's recap. We've got these 5 key ingredients for motivation: self-efficacy, attributions, interest, value, and goals.
And we've talked about how to actually use them, from analogies and storytelling to building that supportive classroom environment.
But the biggest takeaway, I think, is that motivation isn't some mystery. We can actually cultivate it, nurture it,
And by doing that, we help our students become the best versions of themselves. But there's one more thing I think we should touch on.
Ooh, tell me more. What else is there to unpack about motivation?
It's funny, as we've been talking about these 5 keys, I keep thinking they don't just apply to students.
Oh, you mean like for us too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We all need that self-efficacy, right? That belief in our own abilities.
makes sense.
And we got to see how our effort leads to results, those attributions and control.
Right, like we have to believe we can make a difference.
And find things that interest us, that we find value in, set goals to keep us moving forward.
Whoa, you're right. It's like to motivate others, we got to be motivated ourselves.
Exactly. If we understand these principles, we can create better learning experiences, but also, I think, live better lives ourselves.
Like a roadmap for everyone, not just for the classroom.
And that's what's so cool about this. It's about understanding what makes us tick, why we want to learn and grow.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation, from feedback to classroom culture to like personal growth. Wow.
It really has been a deep dive. Hope our listeners got something out of it.
For sure. And if you want to learn more, check out the full article. It's by Maryellen Weimer. We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, and tell us what you think. What resonated with you? What challenges do you face with motivating students or even yourself?
Leave a comment below. Love hearing from you all.
We can all learn from each other, right? Figure out how to spark that motivation in ourselves and everyone around us. So true. Okay, well, I think we've covered just about everything. 5 key ingredients for that motivation recipe: self-efficacy, attributions, interest, value, and goals.
And we talked about how to actually use them, those analogies, stories, creating that supportive environment.
But I think the biggest takeaway is motivation's not a mystery. We can actually do something about it.
We can help our students be their best.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Go forth and motivate.
Until next time.